Let's start bluntly. What's the biggest mistake that you see people making when they want to get faster?
I think with anything, people think that there's simple fixes to everything. That there's like a quick, I don't know, workout. One workout's going to make a difference. Or nowadays it's a drink or a mixture's suddenly going to make you better.
Trainers
are going to suddenly make you better. There's so many different elements to it. I think that it's working out obviously in terms of what is fast as well, in terms of are we talking about sprint speed, are we talking about faster 5k? I think it's working out what where you're trying to go. And often people come to me and they want to run a faster 5k, and then it's obviously looking at what they've done previously, what they're currently doing, and then what we can build on top of that. And then, as I said, it's not just going to happen next week. It's hopefully going to happen maybe a couple of months down the line.
Is that how long it takes?
Well, I think anything that you're going to build, anything you're going to break down as well, because sometimes you've got to work out what someone's weaknesses are. Sometimes you've got to try things and work out that either they're really good at them already, or they're not so good at them, so it's going to take even longer. But I think lots of people want quick fixes these days, and again, we've got an internet that's telling people that do this and you're going to have this result straight away, and that's why I actually love our sport. Of running, where it takes time, it takes years often, and it takes real setbacks and trying and failing. But then when you do hit it, when you do improve, then that's when yourself as a coach, you get the nod, and when athletes, they get that real sense of purpose themselves.
Yeah. So what do runners obsess about in training that doesn't actually matter?
Oh, well, it's funny, this almost going back to my last answer about there's so many other things around at the moment, so much noise about whether it's a new drink people are taking, whether, as you said, trainers, mixtures, and so I think that there's so much noise around lots of things that people kind of hear. Everyone has a voice now. Unbelievably, running is super popular right now. The amount of races, the amount of talk, the amount of influencers, which is amazing for me that's been in it for so many years when it wasn't so popular. But it also means everyone has a platform, and there's so much confusion. It still comes down to, for me, some of the real basics, and training is obviously one of those, and smart training, and training that's relevant for you, specific to what you're trying to do, but also in terms of the right amount of rest and recovery, because again, more is better to a certain point, but unless you get the right amount of rest and recovery, then you're almost just training for the sake of training as opposed to training to get better.
Yeah, I think that's often missed quite a lot, is the rest and recovery. People just smash it every day, 7 days a week, wonder why they're not progressing. And it's just because they're not resting, they're not rebuilding, 100%. I guess.
100%. And listening to the body as well. And don't forget, often you're hearing, stuff of people that are either full-time runners or now they're maybe lucky that they don't work full-time. If you're balancing a family, balancing university life, balancing everything else that's thrown in there, they're all stresses on the body, and that means you've got to be smart and give yourself a rest day, and these running streaks, and not had a day off in X amount. So if you need a rest day, take a rest day, and actually that work you've done that day, week, month before, you actually absorb it. I always ask people, who trains to get worse? And if you put your hand up, then you're in the wrong game with any training. We all train to get a bit better, or as you get older like me, try and sustain the drop off of the aging process. But to really have that that magic of impact of training, rest and recovery has to be on point.
Is there one particular area of training that you believe is completely overrated? Now, you've been running for years. Is there something that you used to wholeheartedly believe in, or you see other people believe in, that you've sort of learned through experience that is not wasted time, but it's not as good as everyone says?
It's a really great question. I don't think there's one thing that I can say that doesn't work, because everything in a training program over, say like a month, 3 months, 6 months has its place. It's almost the value that's put into it. We're in a big kind of phase right now of volume and double threshold training, which is basically training twice a day, but doing 2 kind of medium effort sessions, as opposed to back in the day, we would do 1 and we would be, literally ripping each other over the last 2 repetitions to get faster and faster, and literally finish lying on the floor, with, every time you almost trained to, full max exertion. Because in your mind, it was almost like, well, if I didn't, I wasn't getting the most out of training. And I think now we've learned a little bit more control. And obviously, if you control something, you can do more of it. If you can do more of it, you get more volume. And obviously, more volume to a distance runner is magical. But I think the world has changed. Running shoes now give us a lot more cushioning. Back when I was, probably at my peak, we would get minimalist shoes where we were literally almost running on our shin bones. And therefore, I remember doing my first ever half marathon. I think it was like 2016 maybe, when, shoe technology hadn't ramped up yet. And it took my legs days, if not weeks, to recover from a half marathon. I did the New York City Marathon about 18 months ago. I woke up the next day and energy levels were whacked, but legs felt great. And I was like, whoa, this is the kind of change we've had now. So I've had to change my mindset as a coach to actually forget what I used to feel like after training, what athletes feel like now. They can actually do more because the technology's moved with them. So it's you've got to be moving as a coach in terms of technology. It's changing, recovery processes are changing. And again, if you just stay in your mindset of what you did when you were, X age and running X times, then you'll drag people back 20 years, whereas things have accelerated massively. So I think it's that real effort to exertion. But probably when we talk about how do you get faster, there's always still a time and place for those maximum efforts as well.
Yeah. I try to avoid them at all costs, but there we are. They're horrible. Yeah. So for people that don't know, give us a quick version.
Yeah.
How fast were you? And who are the type of people that you're coaching now?
Yeah. So, how fast was I? My career highlight, I was 4th in the world indoor championships in 2004. I made Commonwealth and European finals. I got within, if I put my hand out and look at my fingernails, that's how close I got to going to the Olympic Games as an athlete myself. So, I got super close to probably achieving every goal that I ever wanted to achieve, but I didn't quite get there. I had Welsh records. I won British titles. I was a very consistent athlete. I think I got almost to the top of one mountain, and then when I got there, I realised that there was another whole set of mountains, and also the other thing is the amount of people behind you. It's like that picture of Everest. That line of people behind you are the people that are waiting to take your place and knock you off the mountain that you're on. Myself as a coach, I've kind of created an environment that I didn't have probably when I was an athlete, because I was self-coached myself. So I've kind of created an environment that I would have hopefully loved and thrived, and hopefully maybe have made it to the Olympics, maybe made it to the top table. And so I've been lucky enough to coach athletes that have gone on to the Olympics, gone on to the Paralympics, have won British titles themselves. And that's given me far more kind of self-satisfaction, because I knew what I could do and I knew my kind of potential as an athlete, but passing that on and making sure athletes realize their own potential, and also navigate the issues and problems that any career, any athlete has. You have the highs, you have the middle part, which is most of the time that you're operating in, and then you also have these extreme and really difficult lows. And that's where, as a coach, that they're the times that I think athletes need you most, is when they are really struggling. So I've been really lucky in my coaching career thus far that I think I've been coaching 18 years now. And I think I've coached, it's 18 GB internationals. So I'm one a year at the moment, so I need to keep that going.
Have you got any famous names? Any names that people would know? Any sort of household names?
So, I've looked after, Jake Hayward when he was younger, went on to become an Olympic finalist. Steve Morris, who's a superb Paralympic athlete.
I know Steve Morris, yeah.
Is an absolute legend, and just one of these athletes that it was so fun to help and support. I looked after Jake Smith when he was coming through the ranks as well. So the likes of Charlotte Arter, and Tom Marshall, Ian Thomas, athletes that have won British medals and been to World Championships and Commonwealth Games. And it's as I said, it's I always feel like I'm very lucky to help any athlete, because they they put their trust in you, and you help and support them to try and achieve. And as a coach, that's it's a real humbling thing when people trust what you write programs to them and support them, and then you hopefully see them go and flourish on the track, and hopefully then off the track. A lot of them become coaches or really nice people post running as well, so they're all really rounded individuals that that's what I love seeing, is them growing as people long after their kind of peak careers have finished.
Yeah, I don't think you can deny that. You've been in the game for years. You've lived and breathed this, and the passion is clear, the way you talk about it on your face. So no wonder these people are excited to work with you and stuff. They know that you've got the experience and stuff like that. But I know you're modest. I know you don't like to brag. But can you tell me some of your PBs?
So PBs back in a day, so I was 3:37.0 for 1500 meters. I wasn't that much slower indoors, and indoors you're meant to be a little bit slower. So I was 3:38. Sub 4 minute miles indoors, outdoors, on the road as well. And I ran not a bad 3,000, but I like to tactical race over 3,000.
Yeah. What would you reckon your mile time is now?
Well, I ran the British Masters 45 record, not the summer just gone, the summer before that, and I ran 4:23. So I'm just about probably close to that right now. I think I could run about 4:28. Yeah, where I sit right now for the mile. So, but I've got a couple more years to hit the Master 50 category, and the world record's about 4:20. So I'm kind of keeping my powder dry, making sure I stay in the game, because I'd love to hold a Masters individual world record at some point.
Yeah, that'd be wicked. Yeah. That'd be wicked. So you obviously ran a 3:37 for the 1500 meters. Let's find out how do we get faster then? Yeah. How do we get faster? Right, I know everyone here hates adverts, but this one actually keeps the light on here at Rockman, so bear with me. Rockman runs monthly online running and fitness challenges for people short on time that still want a proper challenge to spike their motivation. You get the buzz of race day without waiting for a far-off event to come around, with no travel and no extortionate entry fees. Just real tests that you can fit in and around your life anytime, anywhere, all year round. And if you're not quite ready for a challenge yet, we've got free, no-nonsense running and strength plans that you can grab via the link down below. Now, let's get back to the episode. If someone wants to get faster, what are they actually trying to improve? Is it aerobic capacity? Is it VO2 max? Yeah. Is it strength in the legs? Yeah. What are you trying to achieve with your training to get you going faster? Yeah.
Well, I think the big one right now is, it's millions of people do park runs. So 5K is a very popular distance. And people will go there week after week and plateau. They hit the same time. And that question's asked a lot of, how do I run faster for 5K? And then it's almost like, again, going back to the, where have you come from, in terms of what your background is, but what are you currently doing right now? And often people are doing very kind of similar runs through the week. There's very little variety. And I kind of look at training in terms of, at certain points, that you need to obviously train above your race distance. And that will make you faster, as in, your aerobic fitness. So again, if you can run double the distance, so as a 5K run and run 10K quite comfortably, that's going to serve you, really well for running a faster 5K. Because if 5K is your limit and you're absolutely dead on your knees distance-wise at 5K, your limit, your ceiling becomes very small. Whereas obviously if you can build up that above distance fitness, that's really important. Now you've obviously got this goal pace you might have. Now at some point in your training, are you ever running at that goal pace? And if it's a tough goal pace, is it hard? And if it's hard, is it unachievable? If it's kind of, we talk about intervals and breaking down the distance, and one of the classics for 5K might be 5 times 1 kilometer with 2-3 minutes of rest, where you're trying to run at that goal pace, or maybe even a smidgen just inside it. That if you can't do that, then there's very little chance you're going to add it all together with no recovery and run faster. But if you start programming in the body to run at that pace, then it becomes mentally more achievable. Physically, your body starts to understand it. That's a nice one. But then the other one that people don't always do is actually run quicker. Actually run quicker than that goal pace, and goes back to speed is beneficial to everyone, but that could be something really simple, like some strides after your easy run, where you're just going and running for 15 seconds, a little bit faster. You're taking, say, like 45 seconds to a minute rest and recover, and you're just programming in the body to run a little bit faster. And that could also be taken to be used as some short hills as well. Hills are kind of speed work for free. Resistance, work where you don't have to go to a gym, where you have to work a little bit harder to obviously cover the same distance. And again, that doesn't have to be, doesn't have to be a long hill. Could be 15 to 30 seconds of a hill. And again, you're trying to run a bit faster. You're obviously, the resistance is there. And again, it just builds up the body's kind of running economy in terms of your ability to work at a certain pace for less effort. And that, again, for everyone, who wouldn't want that? Who wouldn't want to run quicker for less effort? So again, looking at people's training and thinking, are you running over? Are you running at? And are you sometimes running under your race pace? And all those, it's such a kind of lovely blend that you get this variety of training, rather than if you just do one thing. If you just try and do always long, or as some people do, always just one paced easy recovery, if you never kind of test and challenge your parameters, there's definitely a time in a week for going out and just running easy and just switching on, whether it's your headphones or switching off like I do and not have any music, but kind of listen to your kind of self for the week, and you might process what you've been doing and what you've done that day. But I think if you look at your training as a kind of variety in a mix, but also sometimes think that if you're going to try and get faster, I think I said at the very beginning that one session won't make you faster. It probably takes you maybe even 4 to 6 to 8 weeks for the body to absorb that work. And so it's almost, look at getting faster do the work now to get faster, but actually the end goal and the kind of fruits of your work is probably further down the line, and look forward to that. That's a nice reward to have.
How would that look like? Would it look like a nice even slope upwards in terms of your pacing? Yeah. Or would it be a bit more like a hockey stick? And it would, it would take those weeks of graft, and then you'll see, as you say, it absorbs and you see the benefits.
You tend to go for a stepped approach where, and again, it comes back to, more isn't better. If you're increasing your longest run, you can't just keep increasing it over and over again. You tend to go for maybe a 2 or 3 week increase, or you reach a period where you're, what you might call your peak mileage, or your most you've done recently, or, peak volume. And then you have a week or a few days where you come down off the training. And it goes back to that rest and recovery where you want to overload the body and then you want to absorb and rest and recovery. And often people are smart. They think maybe that it could be that they've got a busy period at home or work, or they've got, a race that they're going to ease down for as well. That's not their goal race, but they're still going to have an easier week into that. Because again, if you're trying to stack week after week, I remember doing it at university and learning the hard way where I got to 80 miles a week and I thought, I'm going to do it for another week. I did 2 weeks. I felt pretty good. I thought, I'm going to do it for a third week. So third week felt quite good still. Fourth week, I was starting to feel like, but I had this 80 miles. So I was literally certain times adding on runs. I was missing recovery days to add a run on, because in my head it was like, right, let's do the 5th week of 80 miles. And I was already starting to come off in terms of not feeling great. Week 6, again, it was, and then I'm thinking, I'm losing fitness because I'm not as fit as I was in week 3. I need to do more. So I upped it a little bit to 85 miles a week for week 7 and 8. And by week 8, I think maybe even injured or tired, or I definitely needed week 9 off. But it was a lesson that, you have to be really smart, that you can't just stay at one block for a long period of time. You have to differentiate, and you have to have recovery weeks and easier weeks. And once I learned that you have a couple of weeks of good work, you absorb it, and then you go again, the success is so much easier in terms of your adaptation to training. So yeah, don't do the same mistakes.
No, I guess it's that fear, isn't it? You fear that I'm going to lose fitness if I don't get out there and do that session and stuff like that. So it makes you get out the door and do more than you should do.
It does. Well, everything, it makes you think that more is better. The more weeks I can do, the more long runs I can do. And I think someone once described to me, training is like one of those big buckets where you're filling it with water, but there comes a point where even if you're pouring water into it, it's full up. And then everything after that just becomes a waste. And obviously, if you keep filling that up, and it could explode and you get nothing out of it. Whereas you've got to pour it in gradually, because otherwise you dilute yourself, and also you end up not enjoying training as much. You don't look forward to training. Injuries and illness are just around the corner, and that's my job as a coach, is to try and avoid that and for people to progress. But everyone that ever wanted to succeed wants to do more, and it's just trying to hold people back. And that's often what a coach does. And I didn't have a coach at that point. I was my own coach, and you can't see it from inside a bubble, that you just can't take that collective step back and go, James, you need to stop. Or next week's a 60-mile week. Where's this 80 miles come from? And I'd have gone, well, it's come from me. Like, it was like, because I just made up. That was an arbitrary number, which again, we get caught up with certain numbers and things we look at, So I think it's just taking that step back. I think that's why it's so important. If you've got a voice, you've got someone that can just say, why are you doing that? Is that making you better? Because if it's not making you better, then why are you doing it?
Yeah, exactly. So if I want to get faster now, what does a well-balanced week of training look like?
Yeah. I mean, if you're looking at, there's no one magic week. That's probably the most important thing. That I think, again, going back to the internet, going back to what we see, people are very good at putting up their golden week. And we look at that in isolation, think, that's a great week, I'll mimic that. But what you don't see behind that is maybe the 6 weeks before that could have been purely base training. It could have been weeks of conditioning work. The work that they're doing, not just running, that they're doing in the gym, whether that's circuits, whether that is, light gym work, whether they've really progressed to that point. But also, as it goes back to, what you've done previously, in terms of some people have had a real background previously. They may have had a few weeks off or months or years off, but they've got a bit of background. Other people, they're starting from scratch. I think you've got to be really smart that you have variety in your training. I do think that any endurance event that you're looking to get faster in, that you need a good base. Aerobic base is a fundamental. But I also come back to the conditioning. Are you conditioned for what you're going to ask your body to do? And for me, that could be simple circuit exercises at home, or just building up very gradually. And don't forget that kind of mix of, longer runs, longer repetitions at race pace and below, but not all at the same time, having a variety in there, because it takes a bit of time for the body to absorb, but there's no one magic fit. Every athlete that I look after is slightly different. As I said, some might be speed orientated. They've naturally, you give them something quick and it comes to them naturally. Other people, the complete opposite. They are aerobic, or we call them the kind of animals that kind of like aerobic bases. They can literally run all day, but they find it very hard to run anything faster than the easy pace. So it's kind of getting people out of their comfort zone. So I think you've got to know what you're trying to do in terms of where you're going. And then you've got to kind of work kind of backwards from it in terms of how long you have. And then that smart kind of blend of training. So, the politician's answer there is there's no magic answer. But I think that it comes down to variety. And it comes down to almost, what you've done previously, that you have to then kind of complement your strengths, but then also then work on those weaknesses. Ultimately, what you're trying to do in terms of, if you've got a pace in mind, again, lots of people have paces in mind, especially whether it's a marathon or half marathon, is how realistic is that to what you're doing in training? Because are you ever running at that pace to know that that is realistic? So I think that's part of it. And if it's not, how can you break it down to make that manageable?
Right, okay. I'm going to try and get some specifics out of you now. That was a very good political. So I'm going to give you a scenario.
Give me a scenario, yeah.
Let's look at me.
Yeah.
My fastest 5K is probably about 25 minutes at the moment. Yeah. I've got 10 weeks to get ready, and I want to hit. I just want to get faster. Yeah. I just want to get to 23, 22 minutes, whatever it is. Yeah. How would you? I'm a regular runner. Yeah. But it's just a lot of sort of regular jogs. It's not really speed work and stuff. Yeah. How would you break that 10 weeks down? Would you break that into blocks of sort of 3-week concentrations? Yeah. We're going to build base. Now we're going to work on speed. And then within each of those blocks, what are you getting me to do?
Yeah. So, I mean, you've got 10 weeks. So you've got an ability to, kind of not rush things. First thing would be like, what's your longest run right now? Where you're at in terms of your longest run in relation to your 5K. What is it, Terry? What are you running?
Longest, probably about 5-6 miles.
Okay. Yeah. So you're getting up to 5-6 miles. So you would want in that 10 weeks, not, consistently just build every week, but you'd want to get over 10 kilometers where that became more manageable, more consistent as well. So it becomes something that that you're building towards that long run. And again, going back to that stepped approach where we might build it up for 2 weeks. And then, then we might step it down, then we might build it up for another 2 weeks, whereas you can start to see them already on week 5 or 6, having just built up your long run. And then obviously, you're getting hopefully to a point where you're maybe running even more than your 6 miles. Maybe we built you up to 7, even 8 miles. So you've never been fitter, hopefully, in terms of your aerobic long run. That's easily achievable in 10 weeks and where you're starting. That's a nice start point, which would be a good kind of base for building then to be able to run a faster 5K. Yeah. I think people get caught up sometimes and say you're wanting to run 23 minutes, that your first, say, like sessions in earlier on have to be at 23 minutes. You have to be really realistic about where you're at right now. And that's going back to that feel of, the kind of like, if that feels like 5K effort, then that's the time where you're at right now. But it's kind of like building upon it in terms of, and if you are kind of getting more efficient at running kilometers towards 5 minutes, then I would like to think that would, over a couple of weeks, start to get easy and the pace would start to drop. If for some people that's unmanageable, then you can even cut it in half. So you could do shorter repetitions, but try and run, if that 23 minutes is something that is achievable, then running half that distance, whether it's 500 meters at that 23-minute pace. And you can break down intervals. There's fartleks, which is you're moving in between. There's different distances you can run. There's a lot in there. There's so many different elements to it. So, and again, that can start early on in the program. But it's also with the build that you're kind of like progressively, hopefully, then going to get slightly quicker as the program goes on. Within that as well, you kind of got this ability to build up your threshold. So again, it's really controlled work, where you are, kind of building this kind of, threshold, trying to push your envelope up, and where you're it's uncomfortable, but you can maintain it for a duration of time. So which people don't always like. It's uncomfortable, and you've got a treadmill in the back there. They're great for setting, whether that would be your kind of marathon feel. If you have any idea what your marathon kind of pace or your half marathon pace, and running longer repetitions or a number of repetitions at that. And again, if I said go and do 10 times 3 minutes at marathon pace off 1 minute, if you think actually that shouldn't be impossible, if marathon time would be, I don't know, in 3 hours excess, so you should be able to do that for 30 minutes.
4 hours excess.
4 hours, but you should be able to do that, but it won't be easy.
No.
But it won't leave you lying on the floor in a pool of your own sweat thinking, I don't know what I can do tomorrow. But what it will is it will build your aerobic base as well. And again, that volume. So, again, you can complement it really nicely in that time where you can push up your threshold, push up your long run. It's not a linear line that will just go up in terms of 10 weeks. You just can increase everything. You probably get to a certain lifestyle point as well in terms of frequency of how many times you run a week. People have a limit, because of other things they're doing, whether it's previous injuries, whether it's their life balance. They just don't have time to run X amount, and that's fine as well. You might be 4 times a week, might be 3 times a week, and therefore that then dictates how much you can do in those sessions. And you have to start prioritizing that actually that long run is a priority. The one interval session is a priority, and it might be if it's 3 times a week, then the easy run is the other priority. If it's 4, then magic, we can put in the threshold session as well. And you can see now where you've got a bit of a blend, the week starts to change, a bit of variety in the training as you build through. 2 weeks, easy week, 2 weeks, easy week. You're looking probably at, maybe 6 weeks of really good training in there with 3 weeks of kind of down recovery, more kind of, kind of absorb the work. And then you're in the race week, Terry, where you've got to do it. So, yeah. And I think that, and you could also, simulate and do something where you break the race down and, you know, kind of get a feel for it before. But yeah, so I think that key is variety. Key is thinking about those components that you can challenge and train. But yeah, I think if someone trying to run 23 minutes, you wouldn't necessarily need to be like, right, I need to be this just exclusive block. I think that's a nice thing with 5K. It's an event that you do need to spin the legs a bit, but you also need an aerobic base as well. Yeah. And a 10-week plan is almost ideal for a blend of everything within there.
So I see what you say. So you blend it all. It's almost like you've got to get your distance in.
Yeah.
You've got to get your maybe sort of race pace, would you call that, a threshold? Yeah. And then pushing the envelope sessions.
Threshold's going to be slower. Threshold's going to be slower. It's quicker than your long run, but it's not as quick as your race pace. And then you've got work at your race pace, and that's almost the one to kind of develop over that 10 weeks is how long you can run at it for less recovery. So you might have in the beginning, you might have shorter repetitions for longer recovery. And then what you're doing is you're then reducing the recovery and increasing the repetitions so that you're bridging the gap between, there's no rest in races. You say that to people, great, you can be the world's greatest interval trainer, but come race day, no one stops the race and says, right, everyone, have a minute rest. We'll go again in a minute. Yeah. It's continuous. And 5K, chatting to someone the other day that 5K is one of the hardest events.
It's disgusting.
No, exactly. I think that's even like the terminology that sometimes used. That it's really hard if you run and you hit a 5K properly. It can really hurt you, and therefore your training at some point has to replicate that. But also, as I said, it moves your parameters on in terms of your distance, and as I said, running a little bit faster sometimes makes you then more economical when you go back to running at 5K pace. Because again, talk about parameters. If 5K is your longest run, and that's all you ever run is 5K, your parameter is 5K. Whereas obviously, if you're running 10K or 12 or 13K, 5K becomes a bit of a shorter run. If you're never ever running faster than your goal 5K pace, your parameter is fast. That's what I class as fast. Whereas you're sometimes running faster, that's fast. It's about changing your parameters. So if you know you can run faster, even as say going back to that 15-second stride, then the body goes, actually 5K pace is fast, but it's not as fast as I can run, and it's definitely not as long as I can run as well. And so it's just, again, playing that balance between the physical element of things, but also the mind element that you want to know that you can maintain it. As you said, that disgusting feeling at 4K, if you're out there in that park run and you're at 4K, that's when the body's saying, oh, come on, slow down. Yeah. And if you're going to hit that goal pace, it's probably where definitely is where you got to either maintain it or sometimes even pick it up. And it goes against everything your body's telling you. Legs are screaming, mind's telling you this is horrible. Easily back off, easily slow down. But yeah, that's where the training, then you're like, no, do you know what? I know I can maintain this. I know this feeling, and I can get this done. And I think that's what it is. Your training should prepare you for racing, or running a faster 5K, and hopefully you enjoy the process and you enjoy the end product of it.
Yeah, it's train hard, play easy. That's what they say, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's like convincing your body that this is easy. The 5K is easy if you're training harder. Yeah. And I like that. It's just because you did avoid giving specifics, but it's because you've got to find out where you're at.
Yes.
And then you just build week on week.
100%.
You're not looking at going in week one, right, let's bloody blitz it, let's run the bloody 5K at that time. Yeah. It's just building week on week on week and to get you to that faster point, right? Yeah. So
and also everyone, say for example, someone comes to you and they're already running 13 kilometers or 16 or 20 kilometers, their long run, then that's not the component. That's the component you maintain, but that wouldn't be then the focus, right? Okay, if they want to run faster, what's the other elements that need more focus? So, and again, if someone is running all of their work at race pace, great, but it's like, are they doing enough around, above or below? So I think it's working out the little tweaks. Everyone's slightly different. Yeah. Everyone's got a slightly different background of, where they've come from, what they've done, other sports they've done. And again, it's almost like, and also what their timeline is as well. Some people want PB in 5 weeks. Some people are realistic. It's like 5 months, and definitely the latter is the easier one.
Yeah. But what are your thoughts on heart rate training? Is this something that you prescribe to? Is this something that you get yourself, your athletes to do? So what is heart rate training? How does it work?
Well, heart rate training is obviously, taking away the guesstimate. I know I'm an advocate for run to feel, but I think heart rate training is, in the heart rate, we've got, I've got a watch on that has load of data, loads of stats, creates the zones for me without me even putting my own data into it. You can go and get, properly tested on a treadmill, and it's a bit like, taking your car to be MOT'd. They give you then your bespoke heart rates for paces, and that, takes away the guesstimate. Your watch is obviously based on everyone's data. It can be slightly inaccurate at certain times. I think for me, watches are really good, and heart rates are really good if people have been tested for going back to those thresholds where a certain heart rate, if you go above that, you're working too hard. And there's obviously, a couple of different threshold zones. You know which threshold you're hitting, and you know that almost what you're putting into that training session is going to be far more beneficial in terms of it's not guesstimate work on that. I think that heart rates are pretty good for every runner for making sure you run easy and you are running recovery, because again, some people will kid themselves. They're like, I feel easy, and they're red in the face and they can't speak and they're slowing down, and you're like, that's not easy, that's not rest and recovery pace. Whereas your heart rate, you should have some data or create some data yourself that what an easy run is. I know myself when I'm out for an easy run, I look at my heart rate and I know if I'm recovering that it's under 140 beats for me. I know if I'm really recovered and I've absolutely nailed it, can be even under 120 beats. I know if I've had a few late nights, I've had a really busy period at work, I've overtrained a little bit, and it's telling me 150, 160, that I need to be a bit smart. I need to ease down in the run, but also I need to be careful then for the rest of the day, rest of the next couple of days. So heart rate, even when you're not training, is really useful. Your resting heart rate is a really good indicator that you're sleeping, fueling, hydrating, and actually you're ready to train, or you're just fighting something off as well. I don't think we use our resting heart rates enough. Going back to our bodies are amazing bits of kit that we almost take for granted. Everyone has a resting heart rate, and it's also I think it's a missive of us not to appreciate what it is. If you said to someone, what's your resting heart rate, most people would be like, I have no idea. Runners with watches and people, you would probably have an idea because your watch does it for you automatically. But I think that's almost like, that's you're plugging into the mains to see what your battery, like an electric car. If you get an electric car, you look at what the percentage is if you've been driving it for a few days. If you looked at your battery, that's your heart rate in the morning for when you run. Yeah,
well, you get it on, I think, on my Garmin. It's got the body battery. I can see how much I've recharged.
But you also know, don't you, when you're tired and run down, that if it's higher, and if it's higher than it should be, it's a pretty good indicator normally that you've overcooked it either training or in life, and that you've probably got to back off. That it's probably unsustainable if it's started to spike. But also you have a really nice kind of feeling when you're fit and you've got a nice balance of training. You look at your resting heart rate. I think mine was 34. Once upon a time.
Did they have to check you were still breathing every now and then?
Well, I just remember it was just like, and that was, so I was like, and my max heart rate was over 200 beats. So again, going back to those parameters of, I could get over 200 beats, and my resting heart rate was 34. So, I was sat, with a nice range. So I think it's fun if you understand it. Don't become too obsessed all the time. Because again, when you step on a race line, most of the time, you might look at your heart rate. Distance runners now for like marathon, half marathon will a little bit, but if you're doing like a 5k, it's very, very often you won't have time to look at your watch and your heart rate.
You've got time to breathe.
You're trying to get air on board and making sure you don't run into the person in front of you.
Yeah, I wonder if you can give me because obviously when you do your heart rate, it splits it into 4, 5, maybe 6 zones, depends on which one you're looking at. Yeah. What's the importance of those zones? What do they represent?
They represent how hard you're training. Yeah. Obviously represent the zone you're trying to train. And obviously, there's times of training plans that certain zones. Obviously, as you go up in numbers, they're harder. And obviously, you don't want to be spending all your all your work, if you're running max all the time, that's a massive red flag. Yeah. A lot of people, with going back to that volume, will spend a lot of time now in zones 1 and 2. You probably heard a lot about zone 2 training, as everyone has, very popular. And that's because it's volume. It's sustainable volume that you can maintain and keep going and build. And again, it gives you an idea that you are not... Previously, sometimes people train too much in the middle, where it was almost too steady running. It wasn't hard and it wasn't easy, and basically just diluted themselves. So they basically were never really effectively getting the most out of themselves. It was steady training, and steady training has no real extremes in terms of longer or faster or at race pace. And therefore, people were just doing a lot of kind of almost, we used to call them jump miles, where just wasn't effective. So again, prioritizing and putting it into those key bands means that this X is at this amount. Even if I'm feeling good in this long run, I'm not suddenly going to like ramp it up the last few miles. I stay controlled, but also then sometimes I do need to challenge myself. When I'm racing, I've got to be in a higher zone. So if I don't spend time at that zone, then I'm pretty much done for.
That's the biggest benefit I actually find with the heart rate on my watch, is that when I'm running a race, I can look at my heart rate and I almost know how long I can maintain at that heart rate. So if I'm going too fast, I know I need to bring it back down, otherwise I'm just going to blow up. I want to talk about marginal gains. Yes. You're the professional. You're the coach. Now, we've talked about just general training, but you must know some little marginal things that are going to push the 1%. Yeah. What small percentage gains are actually worth chasing? Is it your running gait or...
Marginal gains are really simple for everyone. And I think even if you're a runner, sports person, non-runner, sleep is the biggest marginal gain you can get. And I'm as guilty as anyone that I don't get enough sleep. Even driving here, I was actually thinking I need to start prioritizing sleep, because my new watch I got at Christmas tells me even more data than I want to know about my sleep pattern, and it's not great. And I know that back in the day when I was an elite athlete, I was sleeping probably 11 hours a night, and I was also napping 2 hours in the afternoon as well. So I was probably sleeping for 13 hours. I reckon there's been some weeks with busy lifestyle over the last few years where I maybe slept 13 hours in a week, maybe a bit of an extreme, but 13 good hours, because it can be a bit kind of mix and matched. And so you kind of like that, that was such a key kind of performance enhancer, because you recover, you're more alert, you can do more training, and we can all do it if we kind of, hopefully sometimes prioritize it. But I also know how it's very easy to sit and watch Netflix late into the evening and burn into that time because you feel like you need some time to yourself, and then you're back up early in the morning and you're getting 6 hours sleep, and that's not enough. I think again, in terms of marginal gains, refueling pre, during and after training are just such important kind of factors, and obviously the right fuel at the right time for the right event or specific activity you're doing is so important. And the same with that hydrating as well. Being hydrated during the day just is so important. And again, it's one we really easily forget. And during training as well, I constantly not shout at my athletes, that's wrong, but they know I will look at them disapprovingly and say, right, have a drink of your drink within the recovery. I haven't got one. And there's a few guilty athletes in there that they know, and they apologize, and they know next time, because again, it's so important you rehydrate during the training session and then after as well. They are such important easy wins for anything you're trying to build. And then going back to what else you could be doing, they're probably for me the real drivers. Other marginal gains, I don't know whether there's any real kind of magic. As I said, there's so many things out there right now. Do they make a massive difference? Whether that's the drinks, the potions, the different stuff out there that are kind of like added on value. I think to certain times they do help for some people, but I think there might even be a psychosomatic take this kind of mixture before, and I'm going to run a PB, almost forgetting the great block of training they've done, the fact they periodized into that race and they're ready and rested to go. They think a drink they took 2 hours before was the difference between that and a PB. If it helps them, then then as a coach, I'm like, take it. Marginal gains.
I suppose it works in that respect. Even
as long as it's on informed, tested, batch listed, I am get involved with that. So, but I think that the ones that control the controllables. I think that they're the biggest kind of marginal gains, and the other one is just the marginal gains of up here and how important our minds are to us, and how we often we're our worst critics a lot of the time. Training at any level, for anything that's hard. Therefore, and you're going to go through dips in motivation, and you're going to go through dips in kind of like, the kind of, training cycle. But it's kind of, I think it's working through that, and the marginal gains of building your mindset up is often, totally forgotten about or not given the right amount of kind of support. So I think that for us as a coach also is like getting people to think about their mindset and their resiliency to setbacks. Because again, that if you can deal with things that come at you, then marginal gains wise, it doesn't matter if you're in the best shape of your life. If you can't cope with and something goes wrong, then everything goes out the window.
Yeah, I suppose it goes back to the training program that you were on about. It's this stepped approach, it's this building. That's going to give you confidence. Yeah. These little wins over time, and that build your confidence to race day as well, and help 100%. With the mindset and stuff.
100%. Yeah, that should, hopefully goes hand in hand as well. But I think it's just being realistic, and also kind of like good communication. If you have a coach, then that coach-athlete relationship is really important.
Yeah. I put a question down here because I was wondering, there must be like, is there anything to do with how you run, your gait? Is there anything instantly that you can do that will shave a second or two now off my time?
I suppose it's not marginal gains, but I think for me, running economy is an absolute fundamental, and so it goes back to, the effort you're running. If you can run faster for less effort, that's that's the holy grail of distance running as a coach, and therefore thinking about what your running economy is. So thinking about whether that's your form and technique. With a treadmill, you can set up a video with your camera phone, and you can record yourself from behind, from the side, from in front, and look at yourself running in a closed environment, and then thinking about what your foot strike's doing, thinking about what your knees are doing, what your hips are doing, from the side, looking at where your center of mass is, from the back, looking at your shoulder, your oscillation, how you're moving on the treadmill. And then it would be thinking about prioritizing, what is a cause and effect, as in, what would then make me a faster runner? And actually, can you tweak those, whether that's strength, whether that's, work in the gym, and that doesn't have to be with weights. It can be just general conditioning with your own body weight. Because if you can't control your own body weight, then you shouldn't be lifting weights. But again, if and running's 2-3 times your body weight hitting the ground with force each time. So again, and also what you're doing at the end, and going back to the treadmill video, maybe do it at the end of a long run. To drum on the treadmill after your long run, not when you're super fresh, because we can all look superb, fresh out the box. Do it at the end of a long run when you felt fatigued, you felt tired, because you're going to get a better representation of what you look like when you're at your kind of most vulnerable running wise, or your worst, your weakest. Because we all watch people run a half marathon, we cheer them off, they all look great, don't they? We watch everyone coming back in the home straight. It's a different runner coming down the home straight. So have a look at yourself under stress, because that's often where you start to see, things start to buckle. You see, the little hole in the bucket. That's where the water's starting to come through, and therefore, then what does it look like? What can you influence? Is that in the gym? Is that exercises? Are there drills you can do, walking drills? And then, going back to, I love hills for running mechanics, because to get up a hill, you've got to run up a hill. So you don't fall up a hill, that you have to pull yourself up the hill. Therefore, exaggerate your knee lift, your knee drive, you exaggerate your arm drive. Also, that resistance means that when you go to a flat, then actually a flat then suddenly feels a bit easier. So I think short hills are a really effective way of improving your running economy, improving your ground contact time as well. And that could be something, so it's super simple, like 6 times 20 seconds of a hill with a walk recovery. And then I always like people to go and run after, and you might go and run for a few kilometers after, almost to calibrate. So you've run a bit faster on a hill, you've got resistance, and you go and run on the flat at a slower pace. And it's almost like, again, going back to those parameters, the body goes, I know what it's like to be running fast under resistance, and then you bring it back to slower. And actually, it's almost like, again, kind of this calibration of thinking about your good form, thinking about whatever you saw on the treadmill that you need to be thinking about, whether that's, we all sit down, don't we? We all slouch all day most of the time because we're sat on computers, we're driving. Very few of us sit with a nice, good posture. So it might be that. I said it might be your arm carriage, but what's that focus? So when you go and run that, that nice bit of controlled running, what are you thinking about form wise? And then, like anything, go and recheck it. Go and watch yourself again in a few weeks' time after doing the drills, after doing the exercise, after doing some hills. Are you then starting to see a difference in your technique? But then hopefully the key is always, are you then running faster for less effort? And that might be going back to your heart rate, that you're going out for your easy run. You're suddenly running 5 seconds faster a kilometre for your easy run, and your heart rate's 5 beats lower. You'd be like, how has this happened? Training has happened. And again, you've looked at what your weaknesses are, you've addressed them, you've done lots of different components, but then you're not expecting it also to happen just the next session. It might be 2 weeks, it might be 8 weeks, but go back and recheck. And I think people would be pleasantly surprised if they did that, because a lot of people just don't learn to run. A lot of people just go and run. In terms of technique, people don't actually ever really often work on it. I would say to people, if you're a pole vaulter or a sprinter, that's all you do is technique. You go down, you're not going to have a pole vault that's just going to go down, and you're not going to have 100 pole vaulters just all bombing in at once, not thinking about technique. It would all be about technique first. Whereas runners, we get everyone just running, and it's almost like we've forgotten often to actually learn how to run more efficiently, because we've all just ran at some points in our lives. So I think, running technique and running form and working on weaknesses, it's becoming a little bit more kind of more mainstream, but there's still a lot of people out there that have never really thought about it. And I said, you don't have to own a treadmill yourself. Go down to your local gym and capture yourself. It's very easy to do.
It's all there. You were talking about improving over time as well. It's one of the best features on Strava that I love is it tells you when you've done the same run, and then it'll show you side by side. That's a great way. So every 4 weeks, I like to do one of the same runs that I did 4 weeks ago, and that you get a direct comparison. Then I love that bit.
Works. Yeah, so I like that function on Strava too, but for almost a slightly different reason. Where if I'm out for a run and feel absolutely awful, and I get back, I'm like, that must be the slowest I've run it in. And then I look at that function, it tells me the year ago I ran the same time. It reassures me actually that I'm not running as badly as I thought I was. I think that little bit of data about previous runs and loops, I think it's beneficial.
It's awesome. If someone's listening now and they want to get faster, what's the first thing they should do?
First thing, you've got to be realistic to where you're at. Okay, so if you're getting faster, and going back to that, what is faster for you? What is the distance you're trying to get faster at? How long have you got? Is it a realistic timeline? And then it's like, right, then it's going back to those ingredients of what am I doing right now? What do I need to increase, add between now and obviously trying to get faster? Within that, whether that's running longer, whether that's running that race pace, whether that's running below, that's challenging yourself. That's mixing up probably what you've done, doing the same thing you've done previously and expecting the same result. We often do that and think, why are we not getting faster? I did the same training sessions and the same block that I did, but so mix it up variety wise. But again, I think people often get that their fast is X or fast is that. Fast is relative to you. So if you can improve your own times, that's fast, and your speed is relevant to you and relative to you in terms of what you class as speed. And that's the great thing about our sport. You're only really racing yourself and your own previous times. And I'm in a position now where I will never run a 5K personal best in my lifetime again, because age says I won't, because I know what I was doing when I did run my personal best. So for me, I'm fighting old father time to try and decrease how slow I run per year. So my mindset now is training to make sure that I maintain a level, but accepting that I'm going to lose a few seconds. But again, the relative kind of mindset is that, did it feel like a hard 5K? did I feel like I ran it, from start to finish as well as I could? And that's the time that I ran at X age. So next year, I want to make sure I can get as close to that percentage or that time again.
Yeah, it's your own bloody fault, James, because you're so bloody fast back when
Wow, yeah.
If only you were slower, you might be. You could steep.
Yeah, or go to a new event. I did run a marathon PB in New York because I'd only ran a few marathons.
So you're still getting PBs. You just got to change your focus.
You got to change your event, and go up distance. So
James, where can people follow you? And you've got a podcast as well, so plug that.
I do, yeah. I'm part of the Beyond the Track podcast, myself and Jenny Long, for talking about everything in Wales and beyond in terms of some topical news items, track and field, cross country, road. So it's super exciting. I'm at Team Thie coach on Instagram. So coach at Team. I can't remember. Coach Team Thie. I can't remember my own.
Google it. Just Google it. Yeah.
I'm on Instagram somewhere. I think it's Coach Team Thie. I think. And then I've got a Team Thie circuits. So going back to conditioning, I started a circuit during lockdown. Team Thie circuits on YouTube. It's coming to its 6th birthday next month. We've done 230 Team Thie circuits, and it's free for anyone to turn up on a Monday at 6:15. And when I started it, I was in that first week of lockdown where we were told as coaches you couldn't have contact, you couldn't have face-to-face. And I thought, how can I still reach my community, but also kind of feel like I'm kind of, helping, what's going on. So I started this circuit, and people turned up, and I've had hundreds and thousands of people get involved with it, and people still turn up now every Monday. And because they turn up every Monday, I keep turning up. The time that I turn it on and no one turns up, that'll be the last Team Thie circuit. But it's got a life of its own, and so I have people literally message me week by week saying it's really helped them. They really enjoy it. So so 6th birthday Team Thie circuits on a Monday.
Congratulations! That's incredible. 6 years. 6 years of a free circuit session, and everyone and over 2,000 people.
Or just people just keep turning up, and and I just
the buggers. I wish it'd stop.
I honestly, like what we did during lockdown, no one ever thought that, I never thought it would continue because, I don't know, it was such a strange, odd time. And when obviously we kept coming back out of these little kind of fire breaks or lockdowns, people were like, can we keep it? I was like, yeah, fine, that's fine. And then obviously we finally came out and I was like, I'm still enjoying it. People are still turning up. It's helped my longevity as a runner as well, I think. I'm still winning British Masters titles and racing in spikes, which at the age of 47, I'm quite proud of that. And the last 6 years, pretty much the only S&C work that I've done is my own circuits. So it's kind of blended, my kind of training together, and as I said, and it's got this community and this life of its own. But again, really humbling that people still turn up from all around, not just around Wales, around the UK. I have Paralympic champions tune in from New York. I have people tuning in from far away to be part of it. So it's fun, and here's to another 6 years.
Brilliant, man. Well done. James, thank you very
Terry.
much for coming down.
Thank you, my friend. Awesome.
Cheers.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. Congratulations, you made it to the end of the episode. If you found value in it, please leave us a review or drop us a comment below. YouTube thinks you'll like this video next, so click there. Go on. Give it a click.